Denny Hamlin just did to the field what Sammy Smith did to Taylor Gray last night, which was obliterate him, or them in this case, I guess. But we didn't quite have the level of chaos, I guess, as last night. But we saw a few tempers flare. Chris Buescher and Noah Gragson got into it. Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick. We had some upset, typical short track, people getting mad at each other kind of thing. But nothing insane. But as I said, Denny Hamlin, progressively, pun intended, by the way, just killed everyone today. Led 274 out of 400 laps. He had the fastest lap of the race, which is a bonus point. Remember that. He won stage 2. I don't remember where he finished in stage 1, but he about had a perfect day. So first one with Progressive in only their second race together. His first win at Martinsville in a decade. That's his 6th Martinsville win, and it's been a decade since he has won at the short track. There was a few minutes there that we got really close to a repeat of last night with about 80, 70 to go. I can't remember the exact lap marker, but we had like 3 or 4 cautions like back to back to back to back, and I was like, oh my God. This is going to turn into last night. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get stupid. Thankfully, we did not get there. The last 60 or so laps of this race went green. Now, remember, last fall at Martinsville, we had a different tire. We had a softer tire that we saw fall off, and we actually had a pretty good race at Martinsville by next-gen standards last fall, despite the whole race manipulation thing. Anyways, as I said, we had a really good race last fall. Battles for the lead, tire fall off, comers and goers, and all sorts of passing all throughout the field. Whereas previous next-gen races at Martinsville, you don't get a lot of that. You kind of just see them get in line. Even when they bump each other out of the way, you're able to survive the blow for the most part. Today, we saw a little bit of passing, but it was nowhere near last fall. But I'd still say it was better than most of the next-gen races at this track, but yes, it was not quite as extreme as last fall, if you ask me. But as I said, Denny Hamlin just really obliterated the field, but at the beginning of the race, we kind of saw things shuffle up a little bit. We saw Christopher Bell lead the first 25 laps of this race. Chase Elliott was able to pass him for the lead, and it was like, okay, we're going to see some passing. We're going to see some upfront battles for the lead. Quick caution after that. But then this is where it got interesting. We saw some alternate strategies. We saw Josh Berry, a few others stay out on the racetrack. We saw some guys take 2 tires, some guys take 4. So it really shuffled up the order, and we had to see guys like Chase Elliott, like Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell restart 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and kind of have to climb their way back through the field, back up to the front to lead laps and win stages and whatnot. We saw that up until, 120 to go or so, when SVG, after a pit stop, his tire was not fully attached. It went flying off, and that is a caution. Up to that, it looked before that, I should say, it looked like we were going to have a strategy race on our hands in terms of the tires, 2-stop versus 1-stop, kind of like what we see at Richmond in a sense, because we had seen a few guys pit earlier, a few guys who not necessarily were desperate, but they were in a position where if they got pinned 2 laps down, it doesn't affect the rest of their season, because at this point, they've had a bad day. They're running where they shouldn't be running. Why not try something different? And, well, as I said, that got ruined by SVG's tire flying off and causing a caution. Into the race outside of those few cautions, as I mentioned, where it looked like we were going to have the Xfinity finish. Pretty straightforward. Denny Hamlin, just like a run earlier in the day, he was kind of maintaining the gap. Christopher Bell could get within 2 to 3 tenths of him. Denny Hamlin would stretch it back out to 7. Bell pulls back within 3, back out to 7. Then finally, after a point in the run, Hamlin just managed his tires to perfection. Bell, Bubba, Chase, they all fell off. And Denny Hamlin ends up winning this thing by like 4 or 5 seconds. Coming over here to the final results of this Martinsville race. Denny Hamlin is your winner. His first win of 2025. His first win since April of 2024. Believe it or not, he was almost on a full year winless streak. That last win came at Dover. JGR, they didn't struggle at the tail end of 2024, but there was a step back. Like Hamlin, Bell, they were still leading laps. I think Truex got a couple of poles somewhere in there. They were still really, really good, but they just couldn't finish the job. Whereas this year, look how they've started. 3 in a row from Christopher Bell. We got one from Denny Hamlin already. The 19 and the 54, we'll talk about them later on. But the point being that JGR is back to their old selves in a sense. And once again, it's not like they were horrid at the back end of last season. It's just they couldn't finish the job. They couldn't get the wins. Well, now they've won 4 out of the first, I think we're at race 7 or 8 now. So they've won at least half of the races that we've run in 2025. And as I said, Hamlin just obliterated the field. He was the best car all day. Once he got out front, he was able to control this race at any pace he wanted. Whether he wanted to slow it down and manage his stuff, everyone would get right up on him. Whether it was Chase Elliott, Christopher Bell, Bubba Wallace, they'd get right to him. But after 30 or so laps, Hamlin just managed it perfectly. Everyone else was pushing, and they couldn't do anything about it. Just whipped the field today. Denny Hamlin, first win of 2025. First win for Progressive. That's always great to see a new major company, major sponsor come into NASCAR, and in only a handful of races, they get themselves a win. So they committed to 18 races this season, and in race 2, they are winners. Really cool to see. What if Flo shows up to the track and Denny wins, does she get to go to victory lane? Like, how does this work? I don't know. But point being, really big win for Denny Hamlin today. His first Martinsville win in 10 years. His first race in almost a year. And he does it by leading 274 out of 400 laps and adding a stage win. So he has 7 playoff points at least. I think he has another stage win outside of today. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Christopher Bell finishes second, a 1-2 for JGR, a 1-2-3 for Toyota. We'll talk about third later though. But Christopher Bell, a little bit different than the guys directly behind him, but really fast at the start of this race. Led the first 25 laps, was in the top 5, but then slipped back a little bit to the 6th to 10th range, but was able to climb back up into the top 5. Having that first pit stall was a really big deal, really big advantage. They were able to take advantage of it. Ends up finishing second. So really good speed from the 20 once again. Got themselves a pole, second place finish. They're already in the playoffs. They got 3 wins, but still, really good speed for them. Bubba Wallace is on fire. He finishes third here at Martinsville. We talked about last week. He's great at those 1.5 miles, those intermediate tracks. He did great at Homestead last week fighting for the win. He had speed at Vegas before crashing, but this week, once again, he has speed, but it's not at an intermediate. Now, he's run well at Martinsville before in his career. He's won it at the Truck Series level at this track, but in the Cup Series, I think he had a really good run here last spring, but outside of that, maybe 1 or 2 good runs that I'm forgetting about, but today showed up and they were top 5 the entire race. Once again, this team, the new crew chief, Charles Denny, it's really clicking. It's really going well for this team to start the year. Historically bad at the beginning of the season, but they've fired off really well this year. I think they might be top 5 in the points after this race. They have done a fantastic job to start the season. They are knocking on the door of a race win, and it's a great track for them next week at Darlington. Chase Elliott fourth, looked like the best car for the first quarter of this race, led 42 laps, was able to run back to the lead a couple of times, but once Denny Hamlin got around him, it proved that Denny Hamlin was indeed the best car. Elliott ends up fourth. He's always been great at Martinsville. His last 3 Martinsville finishes are 4th, 2nd, and 3rd, so it was no shock to see him up there. This seems to be his best track in the next-gen era. But yeah, really good run for them today. They seem to have somewhat winning speed, not quite as good as the 11, but you could argue maybe the second best car. Maybe Bubba and Bell were better, but they led a good chunk of laps today, which was really good for them. Kyle Larson with a top 5 finish. He's done really well at this track in the next-gen era. Another top 5 for him. Really good finish for him. Ross Chastain 6th. Really solid day, but he upset some people. He threw some aggressive blocks. He got shoved out of the way a couple times. In fact, Joey Logano after the race said he was racing like a donkey. That's the right word to use. But for a minute there, it looked like prime Ross Chastain was back, pushing people out of the way and raging a couple of drivers, but I guess only one was really mad after the race. That was one of the tempers, I guess, I referenced earlier. But ultimately, Chastain with a really good run, a really good top 10. Ryan Preece is also on fire. 3 straight top 10s for him. He finished 3rd at Vegas, got a top 10 last week at Homestead, and we expect him to run well at Martinsville at a short track. He ran great there in his SHR starts. He has run great so far this year. And as of today, this is looking like a fantastic hire by RFK. Ryan Preece, 3 straight top 10s. He started off the year horribly. He was flipping at Daytona again. But obviously the season is not one race, and they have rebounded extremely well. Ryan Preece, 3 straight top 10s to start out the season. The hottest driver for RFK right now. 8th place, Joey Logano, their first top 10 of the season. He's led a bunch of laps this year. They've won stages, I think. They've had a great start, but they have not put together the finishes. Well, today they put together the finishes, despite getting dumped by Chase Briscoe with about 90 to go or something. I can't remember the exact lap. They come back and finish in the top 10. Great job by Logano and company. Great at these short tracks, so no surprise to see him up in the top 10. Chase Briscoe finishes in 9th. Todd Gilliland with a top 10. How about that? Great run by Todd Gilliland, Front Row Motorsports. Great to see Todd Gilliland in the top 10. I think that's his 2nd of the season. Correction, that's his 3rd top 10 of the season. Finishing in 11th was Ryan Blaney. Really good at this track, but today they had to start at the back of the field. Made their way up. They were in the top 5 at one point, but just for some reason they're just dominant in the fall. But the spring, they're just not quite at that level. So I don't know what it is. Great run by Michael McDowell today. He was in the top 10, top 12 for the majority of the day. Ends up in 12th. 13th, Ty Gibbs. Oh, my goodness. Ty Gibbs was finally having a great run today. He was in the top 5 at times. Made his way up front. Was in the top 10, and he got dumped by Tyler Reddick. Said some choice words over the radio. They talked it out after the race. No punches, no shoves. I don't know if there were any bad words, but it looked cordial in a sense. So after that, I was like, oh my goodness, they can't catch a break. They finally have speed. They're finally up front, and they get obliterated. But he rallies, and he finishes 13th. And you may be wondering, why am I celebrating a Ty Gibbs 13th place finish? Guys, this is their best finish since like September. It has been horrid for the 54. So at 13th at this point, with how bad it's gone since September, you take it and you just say, good job, guys. 14th, Tyler Reddick. Speaking of, they had a little bit of a run-in on track, but after the race, they talked it out, so hopefully it's good there. Ty Dillon with the top 15. How about that? Good for Ty Dillon. Zane Smith, Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, Carson Hocevar, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Daniel Suarez, William Byron. This was the shocker to me. They had pit road issues. At one point, they were a part of that group I mentioned earlier that pitted really early on a green flag run to try to do an alternate strategy to make up track position. They got pinned a lap down because of the SVG caution. But yeah, even before that, they were off today. This is a team that usually dominates at this racetrack. They've won multiple races at Martinsville in the next gen era, consistently top 5. They qualified like 7th, and I think the highest Byron got was maybe 7th. Like, they were way off today, and it was really confusing. I don't know why they were 7th today, or they were off today. Really weird day for the 24. AJ Allmendinger, Eric Jones, Chris Buescher got into multiple incidents. Spun out Noah Gragson at one point, much to Gregson's displeasure. They talked it out after the race. I didn't see any fights or anything, though. John Hunter Nemechek, Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman was running really well at the beginning of this race. They had a bad pit stop, and once they were back in traffic, it was over. They couldn't make their way up. They couldn't recover. Justin Haley, Noah Gragson, Cody Ware, Riley Herbst. Josh Berry. Berry led 40 laps at the beginning of this race on an alternate strategy. Had speed, as we would expect out of Berry at a short track. Then they lost power. And when that happened, that kind of just, I mean, it didn't it did ruin their day. They had to replace a battery. They ended up finishing like 4 laps down. So 33rd, not reflective of their speed, but yeah, 33rd. Cole Custer, SVG, as I said, it was a bad day, just all around. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but then the tire coming off, the wheels literally came off of this thing today. So he ends up 35th. Casey Mears, welcome back to NASCAR. Welcome back to the Cup Series. 36th for him. Burt Myers made his Cup Series official debut. I know he raced at the Clash, but that was an exhibition race, so not quite technically a Cup Series start. But this was his Cup Series debut today. He ends up finishing in 37th. 38th, Austin Cindric, the only DNF today, right as Mike Joy was saying we could end up with our first Martinsville race without a DNF. They show Austin Cindric getting pushed to the garage because of a mechanical failure. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Martinsville's in the books. The Monday after tomorrow night, I will make some announcements there regarding my plans in the next couple of weeks. But we got Darlington, we got Bristol. Then we got an off week. The one off week this season.